Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host Mark
I'm your co-host Josh, and today we are concluding Lovecraft July.
with the Void.
Not not the end of the Lovecraft journey, because we will be talking about some from Fantasia next week,
Yep.
with our Fantasia Fest covers, which I'm all super excited about. But ironically enough, speaking of the Void, we are joined by the writer behind the book Empire of the Void, Mr. Andrew Valenza. How are you doing today?
I am phenomenal. Thank you for having me.
I Yeah, of course, man. I am a huge fan of your TikTok content and always love kind of seeing creators in one niche or one platform kind of venture off and to do something like film, books. So I'm really excited to have you on. What can you tell us a little bit about what this story is about?
Yeah. So this is uh, kind of a traditional sci-fi adventure. It's explorers from Earth going out into the unknown in a period of just exploration and optimism, and stumbling upon the evil empire. There's a bit of a twist to the empire itself that I won't get into because I think it's fun the way it unravels. And it really becomes this fight for this man and woman to find each other again after being separated against all odds.
Now, I'm a follower of your TikToks. Mark is not on the platform, but the the way that you've been like describing this through like your videos and like even now, like it has a lot of like Star Wars influence to it. Um, is this like the beginning of what we're gonna see potentially be like a trilogy or a like an entire like saga of books?
Any kind of story like this, I'd say there's a lot of room to explore. I mean, it's uh, the whole the way the book is written is you follow along from the point of view of the main characters Dex and Lacey. Um, so there is tons to be explored within this world I've created. Um, whether that is a sequel or a spinoff or an universe thing, I'd recommend the readers get to the end of the book. I think that'll, because I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a lot to work with.
Awesome. I have not had the chance of reading the book yet, but I am my to read pile list is quite large currently. But my plan is to hopefully my goal within the next year is to read it and check it out. I am not the biggest fan of sci-fi, so I'm kind of curious like what separates Empire from like other sci-fi literary stories.
So, okay, I will give one spoiler here. So, which is why I'm happy that this is the episode I get to be a part of, the Void, because I have seen the Void. I think it's a great movie, and I do really enjoy Lovecraftian stuff. Um, this really is a conglomeration of the movies my dad raised me on, but I didn't. I obviously don't want to make a carbon copy. So there are bits and pieces that of different genre types, different subgenres. Um, so I guess the one spoiler I will give here is the the evil emperor has a lot of hints given to him. He's a godlike being, and I realized the only way to make a character like that without giving into the old Wizard of Oz man behind the mirror kind of thing was to make something really cosmic, not just some dude that usurped the throne or something, but some kind of being with real power behind them. And that kind of just built up until I was like, oh right, Lovecraftian horror, these kinds of beings, that's something truly terrifying. That's something I would like to work with.
That makes me want to read it a little bit more now that there are those Lovecraftian elements to it because this was my first time watching The Void and but this was like I think the first like when we planned to do Lovecraft July, like this was the first title that like we both agreed on to do. And I think this one in particular is a such a really like refreshing spin on the Lovecraftian kind of like style and lore. And so I'm curious to kind of read this now. So my last
I
question,
will.
go ahead. Go
Oh, I
ahead.
don't want to hype you too much because this one is very much the classic sci-fi. Like I said, there's room to explore the universe, and I do plan on doing that. Um, and just as genre styles change throughout the year, the popular genres fluctuate. So will the story of the empire.
All right. Well, you guys can buy it currently right now. It's sitting at it's quite a bargain. Andrew has listed it on Amazon for $10.
Right now, it's 12.99 because I am getting it in stores. I
Nice.
was very happy when I got home today. I saw that a order was placed for a real legitimate chain bookstore. So cheers to that.
Nice.
So yeah, 12.99 on
I
Amazon.
mean, 12.99 versus $10 is not.
Okay.
Yeah, go support indie artistry, whether it's books, films, or any of the thereof. So, all right. So I like I said, I follow you on TikTok and I love your content, but one of the things, and this might be stepping on the feet of our brothers over at Brilliant but Lazy. Go check them out. Our pop culture show, great show. But I gotta know, like, is like the whole love for like Spider-Man 3 like a legitimate thing, or is that like just kind of like a gag for the channel?
So Spider-Man 3, uh, it's it's somewhere in the middle. Um, the 24-hour marathon is a gag. If Lex, my fiance, actually wanted to do it, and we could like document it and make some posts about it or do like a live stream for 24 hours, I would 100% be down. But most of it is a joke. The thing is, I do genuinely like the movie, and it gets way too much hate. Part of that was me when I was young. That was one of the first movies I saw in theaters. That I was like, oh wow, movies can suck sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well, I
then
mean,
going,
there's a ton of movies, and I think Spider-Man 3 was one of them that um they got a lot of hate, but they weren't as bad as people thought they were or
No.
yeah,
claimed they were.
I mean, it's actually both movies that the first two movies I saw in theaters that I didn't like. I actually respect them, not as masterpieces. But Spider-Man 3 and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is like, okay, now that I actually know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about movies, they're not terrible. Spider-Man 3 does have a lot of good things going for it, especially Sandman as a character and that whole forgiveness arc, not so much redemption, but just that moment where Peter's like, I forgive you. That's an amazing healing moment for both of them and a really touching scene, especially in the editor's cut where Sandman shows up as the Sand Castle for his daughter. That I get emotional. I'm not ashamed.
I mean, I
I
think I think for me, Hereditary was one of those movies. I wasn't the biggest fan when I saw it, but I went back and rewatched it. And each time I rewatched it, I picked up on more things that I missed. And it just kind of seemed to get better every time I saw it.
yeah. Yeah, no, I rewatched Spider-Man 3 for like the first time since its theatrical release for a couple years ago for like prep for No Way Home. And I was like, this movie is not as bad as everyone
Yeah,
makes it out to be. Like, it's not great, but it's like it's nowhere near as like terrible as like everyone makes it out
yeah.
to be.
It's got plenty of flaws, especially in pacing and just cringy scenes. Um, but by but even the cringy scenes like make sense to the character. He's a nerd just projecting what he thinks cool would be in 2007.
Yeah, I don't know. That movie gave us Bully Parker or Bully McGuire,
Yep.
so we've got that going for it. So uh but we're jumping into our finale for Lovecraft July. We are jumping into the independent Canadian horror film The Void. This was this was my first time. I think I might be the only person here that I've just watched this for the first time for this podcast.
Yeah, it's been a while since I had seen it. I think I saw it when it first hit Netflix a couple years ago, and I hadn't watched it again since.
I first saw it, and I heard about it prior, but I saw it when I was deployed. Actually, um, COVID hit and everything shut down, and the library was just like, here's some movies, just like put them in a box and like check them out. And I saw The Void sitting there. I was like, all right, I've heard about this. It could be interesting. And I was starting to get into Lovecraft, like reading all the short stories. And I saw the reviews, and the reviews were like, nah, whatever. But it blew me away. I was like, this just looks incredible. The style is exactly on point, and I fell in love with it.
I think it depended on the viewer with the movie.
Yeah.
If you came into it like wanting a drama, it had some drama, but a little confusion. But
Also,
I think the traditional effects are excellent in the movie, which we're a massive fan on.
Especially in the finale.
Yeah. So fun fact about that real quick. So the all the financing for the film itself, meaning like actors, lighting, production, like all of that was done through like traditional channels of the production company. However, for the creature effects, they were all crowdfunded on Indiegogo, and they actually raised $82,510. So the studio fronted all of the money for like the normal stuff, but the fact that like this movie is like crowdfunded by nerds like Mark and myself that love creature features and like practical effects, this movie, I don't know if you guys felt this way. This movie feels like a movie from a different time period to me. Like I know this is released in 2016, but like the fact that this movie has this like yellow greenish tint to it, that tint reminded me of like Gone in 60 Seconds, the first Fast and Furious, Triple X, like the big action movies that were released like late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know if either one of you guys had that experience, but like this felt like a throwback to that era.
I didn't really feel that as much. Um, if anything, not so much in the actual like cinematography, but just the way they handled the production itself. It was a great job of bringing it back to like, you know, David Cronenberg type,
Sure.
like The Fly, not so much the South Fork, but like the overall tone. Because it does start off with not so much the horror, but just this paranoia of like what's going on, like this unstoppable force, kind of like Jeff Goldblum succumbing to the transformation.
It reminded me more a lot of The Thing, with the way a lot of the effects were done and the way
Also
the
with the
creatures were
pacing
designed.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the pacing has like that thing because like it has a really gripping opening, and then like the closer you get to like the big climax of it, the weirder things get.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
Which
much better comparison than The Fly. Because like the thing was in my head, but I already said nope. We're going Cronenberg.
It's and the thing for me that I always get a kick out of though watching it is the fact that the movie opens up, not any big spoilers, but there's like four of the main characters, and one of them, the guy that runs into the woods at the beginning, is the actor that is rolled in Letterkenny. And it's so hard for me to see him as anybody else but that character, even in a movie like this.
if you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us. So it's funny you should bring that up because I have another trivia fact here. So the Canadian film group Astron 6 that did the production of this, since 2000, from 2000 until this came out in 2016, they had mostly been known for horror comedies. So films like Manborg, Father's Day, and The Editor are listed here on the Wikipedia page. However, The Void was the first time that they had actually a uh done a more serious tone film. And this movie is like, I don't want to say it's like super like dramatic and serious, but it definitely doesn't have like an ounce of comedy in it.
No, it doesn't. Like a lot of horror, you have comedic points. Even The Thing had a few jokes in it here and there.
Yeah.
But this had none of that.
This one could have so easily fallen into that category with being, the type of production it is, low budget, and being so ambitious. It could have fallen to that point where it's like it's just too over the top and it's just comical, like that one creature that's all, it's an acrobat. It's like arched over backwards and all that stuff. That kind of delivery in any other hands would have been so comical, just too over the top. But it's just pure talent that kept this afloat, and it really paid off well.
I think what helps, like that scene you're talking about in particular, is like it it looks almost kind of like, I know we keep bringing up The Thing, but like one of the things is like this movie really goes after that whole concept of less is more, right? Like, so like you could see the makings of the creature, and like I feel like you even kind of see a little bit of that in the beginning, but they tease it so much, and like they have a really good use of like lights and shadows in this, to where it doesn't ever feel like, even in the climax, it never feels like you get like a full blown like body shot. Like it's always kind of like hidden behind, and
Well,
I think it really works in its favor.
I think on top of that, the reason that works so well to sell the scene is like you're saying, it's you never get the full picture of any like real monsters, and that's kind of cinematography helps so much with the scope of it. Like in your mind, it's like this thing is so large, this thing is so intimidating that it can't even fit on screen. That creature that's birthed at the end of the movie, it's just like lumbering through the frame, and you can never catch all of it. It's like, yeah, this is something to be scared of. Okay, I want to get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we keep bringing up The Thing because that's the thing it most closely resembles. And a lot of the creature portions and the way the creatures acted and things like that. But the story itself is something completely different. It's a cult movie and apocalypse movie. What?
I want it. Look, I am fascinated by cults. They are my favorite aspect of true crime. I want it so much more from the cults here. Like they look so cool, and they're in it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, there needed to be like an extended cut explaining more about them or showing more about their stuff, what
Like
their rituals and what they do and what they're trying to accomplish.
like
But it's, yeah, they're
sorry.
just people standing outside with
Like
guns.
I get and I understand like the whole idea and the concept about why they exist and like their connection to Calvin. Like I get all of that kind of stuff. I think they worked that really well, but I was really like the thing that I knew about this was I knew there was like a monster and I knew that there was like a cult. And I thought the two were like more intertwined. So that's why like a lot of like the whole like Calvin's like desire to like bring his daughter back into the world, which opens up a whole nother conversation on mental health. Like I thought those two were like more closely connected than what they initially are. So if I have one complaint about the movie, it's that.
Now
Yeah,
that's
good.
I mean, now that you say it, I never really connected, but saying it now, it's like, yeah, there's the cult that's been around forever, and then the leader, his goal is just his daughter back, which is fine motivation, and I dig it. But yeah, it's not a huge connect there.
There's not. And so like, talking about it from a mental health perspective, this movie boils down to essentially you have Calvin going through it, which is he's the skinless dude in the end, and like his entire motivation for everything is to want to be reconnected with his daughter whom he's lost. And so if this entire thing comes down to this concept of wanting to run from pain but never embrace it. And the thing about that is that it, I am of the perspective that like you need that pain and you need that anguish for your mental health journey because it A reminds you of how precious this life is and B it reminds you of all the good things and it also like helps you further along. Like every ounce of pain I've experienced in my life, I've channeled into connecting and helping people with this nonprofit and this podcast platform. I think that like it's really unhealthy to kind of approach it the way that Calvin does.
Yeah, yeah, leading a cult definitely isn't a good outlet. um, no, it's. I mean, it's good for his character to find the character because some people do get just so lost in the loss that they unfortunately succumb to the the dangerous route to heal themselves. I mean, this character puts it's one thing to be a generic villain and be like, I'm gonna destroy the world over this, and it's just like, of course you're gonna destroy the world. Go ahead. But this is a guy that uh, takes somebody else, makes it their personal issue. It's like, hey, I'm gonna put a cosmic demon baby inside of you that's gonna rip you in half. That is so much more terrifying in the on the scale of like a single storyline than just I'll just destroy the world.
Like,
Well, one of the things I found interesting was the way. So we've covered a few Lovecraft movies over the last few weeks, and they talked about in Dunwich Horror how after giving birth, the mother looked like she was torn apart inside. And then they showed the mother of the cosmic whatever, and she is literally torn apart. So I think the similarities were kind of interesting.
so on that subject though, here's the thing. That was the biggest twist for me. I like instantly like I was like drawn to the edge of my seat. You know how like you get when you're like watching a movie and you like they give you a twist and you just don't see it coming and you're like, you're eating your popcorn, you're kind of chilling, and then you're just like, what? That's like how like Maggie's like reveal of like being Calvin's uh father or like like surrogate mother to bring this demon like she was in on it, like she was down for it, she was 100% like here for it. I'm just like, who didn't love you enough as a child?
Well, that's I think that speaks more to cults as a whole, how they bring people and indoctrinate people, the promises they give. Um, I mean, like, hey, you're gonna be the mother of the bringer of the end of days. That's pretty cool, right?
But I mean, think about it. You had back in the day, what all did Manson get all of his followers to do?
Yo,
Simply through being the leader of essentially his own little cult. You find
yeah.
people, you break them down, and they'll do almost anything for you that you want. And what all did he do to his followers for one to be willing to do something like that?
Yeah, and as like as someone that has expressed like being religious in the past on the podcast, like that is one things that like I've like struggled with like off and on for years. It's like, what if like in this, what if I am wrong? Like what if there is nothing on the other side of this? What if, this was just something that kind of came into my life when I was emotionally vulnerable and the state. And I think that's one of the things that, religion and cults, you know, sometimes can be in that word can be interchangeable, but like definitely think that they know how to like, you know, kind of like prey on the weak, and they know what to say, they know how to say it, they know how to make you feel special. And with Maggie's character in particular, I think, you know, it is definitely is that's the kind of situation that you see from her. Um, because she's kind of portrayed as like really broken throughout the movie. And I don't know, man. Yeah, it's cults are an interesting thing, and it's part of the reason that they fascinate me.
They fascinate a lot of people. That's why there's so many docu-series and documentaries on them.
Look, I will be the first one to sign up for that. And like, yeah, man, I don't know. And for me, I feel like I've gotten away from like organized religion as a whole and just really kind of embraced a more like old school, like biblical approach to that kind of stuff. And it's worked out really great for me. It's shown me some things that, I probably were toxic to my own mental health and like my own interactions with people, but seem to be in a much more authentic and good place nowadays. So I wish the same for Maggie, but she dies, so it's too late.
I don't think she's having a fun time wherever she is.
Ah,
Are are we gonna like what happened to cult leader Dude Man? Because they die through the portal, and then they show Cop Boy and his wife standing there.
look,
What
Yeah,
happened to cult leader?
look, Daniel and Allison. Daniel and Allison. Continue.
Okay, cop cop boy and nurse lady.
I didn't remember their names either. It's okay. But
I
I'm
know.
glad you mentioned that
I
because I was just about to ask, can we talk about the ending? Because
Yeah.
I still don't get it.
I, yeah, like the ending is just one of those things that it feels kind of like the way that like Nolan kind of like has like these really open-ended thing, kind of like conclusions to his film, or like David Lynch as a director kind of just making weird stuff kind of try to flow together. The ending just seems like it's like up for interpretation. So I would love to hear either one of your guys' endings or
I
like ideas.
so
It
I
was.
feel like sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Too bad it's your show.
You're the
I
guest.
I so the ending, if you want to go for the open ended, then it should have just like ended as they go through the
Wow,
portal,
I
the void.
agree.
Because I want to talk about it because that last shot of them just standing there in front of the green screen. Wow, that took me
It's
out
really
of it.
painful to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had all the great effects through the
Like,
whole movie, and then
yeah.
you get to that, and it's like,
I mean,
huh.
the like one of the staples of the Lovecraftian genre of filmmaking, especially, is but as a whole, I guess, is the unknown. It's that the open ended. There's I've heard of quite a few. Pretty much all of the Lovecraftian stories I've read, his shorts, are just like the detective being like, "Well, I guess we'll never know what really happened," or the main character that's totally lost their mind and can't tell what they saw or can't finish their story. And then this one's like, "Oh yeah, they went to another part of the universe or another dimension that's made up of bad green screens." It's like, oh, okay, makes sense.
So I think what it's supposed to be is you had the cult trying to tap into basically the unknown and otherworldly to avoid death and to bring people back from the dead and never die and all that stuff. And I think them going through the triangle was supposed to be a portal into that realm, and they ended up in that other world.
So the way that I interpret it, the cult is kind of like this idea of that we see with like other religions basically being like, I sold my soul to the devil, or I sold my soul to X, Y, or Z. So they are now indoctrinated into this cult because they've been promised something in exchange for their soul. And so like I, I mean, you're basically in this cult. They don't even get a name. We're call them the Triangle People.
Sure, triangle people.
Uh,
The
they're
triangle
like
guys.
the Triangle guys. You know, they're like, hey, you get immortality if you join us. And so like they're opening up a world and a portal to another place. So like I don't know. I felt like I agree with Andrew. Like I feel like this was just such a departure from like the Lovecraftian inspiration that this movie was chasing. And like opening up the door and kind of showing the other side kind of breaks that illusion.
On
Uh,
its own, it does kind of, if we're not looking at it from the Lovecraftian part, it does give it a good ironic ending of like, this is where the cult's been trying to get the whole time, and the two people fighting against them are the ones that end up there. Nice ironic twist of fate, but again, that's not the Lovecraftian ending that the movie should have
It
used.
it also breaks the illusion of Daniel being this hero because like it sets him up to be like this like sacrificial hero, like I'm gonna sacrifice myself for the greater good. And then, oh yeah, plot twist, I'm still alive and now I'm in a weird Lovecraftian dimension.
But does that make it more terrifying? Because it's one thing to die and be like, all right, you died, you go to heaven, but no, he's stuck.
well, it's more of crossing over into this other realm than going to heaven or hell. And they mention it in a lot of the mythos other realms that the elder gods are from and exist in. So I think that's what it was ultimately supposed to be. It would have helped if they had made reference to a specific elder god, but
Yeah.
Yeah, they had, they had Walmart Uncle Frank kind of be the main villain. And they're like, yeah, I agree. Like I feel like this is one of those movies that like it feels like such a weird thing to call this a Lovecraft film. It's definitely influenced by Lovecraft, but you don't feel like the Lovecraftian touch the way that we felt with like Reanimator or the Dunwich Horror.
well, the thing is considered Lovecraft influence, and I think The Void might fall more under that than under Lovecraft.
That's fair. I don't. This is like not like my area of expertise. when we talked about doing this month, like Mark was the guy that like knows all of the Lovecraft stuff at least more than I do. So he's the guy that's been bringing the trivia for the majority of it. I am the guy that mistakenly added a Mary Shelley knockoff to this month. So, we're just all around. It's just been an interesting month.
There is one movie that nobody realizes is a Lovecraftian story, um, unless you've really gotten invested in his shorts. I won't dwell too long on this, but Don't Breathe. You guys have seen that.
We've
Uh,
done an episode on it, yes.
ah, darn it. I mean, there was it. It's a little extremely closely related to the Lovecraft story of the old man. It's about the teenage friends who are like, hey, this old man's got a ton of money in his house, and he never leaves it. So one of them is sent in to like get the money. I think he is blind in the short story, and the kid never comes out of the house. So
Mark,
I was
did
like,
you know that?
I'm not familiar with that one.
yeah, I read that.
Interesting.
I was like, wait, that's Don't Breathe.
Yeah, and I think a lot of movies also get the Lovecraftian horror, Lovecraft inspired or influenced that you watch and it's like I don't see it. And it might be because it's got, and I think a lot of times it has something to do with the fact that it's possibly because it might be a cosmic horror of some sort or have some weird creatures and they just throw the label around onto everything. But something like this in The Thing, it has that influence. I think The Void has more of the influence than The Thing had, but
I mean,
it wasn't quite Lovecraft.
The Thing is so clearly. I know it's based on a short story or a novel. Who goes there? But even that was so clearly at the Mountain of Madness.
Yeah. I really wish Del Toro had gotten the rights to doing the Mountain of Madness.
It would have been interesting. I'm not a huge fan of Del Toro. I love his world building. I just don't like his storytelling as much. Like Pan's Labyrinth was great, but otherwise it's like okay, cool designs, cool worlds, but
All right, so let's bring it back to another trivia fact. So, co-writer and co-director Jeremy Gillespie was initially working at Pinewood Studios on a floor below where Del Toro was working on the unfinished film In the Mouth of Madness. Or sorry, in the Mountains of Madness. Yeah, In the Mouth of Madness is a underrated movie, but yeah.
I didn't know that. They should have teamed up. Would have been something great.
Now that he's kind of at Netflix, I have higher hopes for it now. So
Del Toro.
He's doing work for Netflix now, yeah. But they were saying the budget for his Mountain of Madness movie was like so ridiculously high. Nobody could figure out how they were actually going to make money off of it. Well, and that was part of the issue.
Nowadays, every other movie seems like it's got a $300 million budget. So,
yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, coming back to The Void, I really kind of want to talk about the relationship between Daniel and Allison, who is our heroes that end up in The Void at the end of the movie. They are a estranged husband and wife that attempted to, well, they had a stillbirth, and it kind of took its toll in this relationship, and I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about like embracing pain and like, healthily working through it as Mark has hiccups.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of felt like, they just kind of went the opposite way and just kind of ignored it, which also is, if you have something like depression or anxiety, like ignoring it is like the least healthy thing you can actually do. How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Well, it kind of just seems like trauma bonding.
Yeah, that too. Which I mean, in a way, that's what it is. Victims and Villains. We put out an episode last year all about postpartum depression. I'll link it in the show notes below. But like, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't address when it comes to having kids. Mark, I think you're the only person on this call that actually has kids. Like, did you did did your uh daughter's mother kind of go through any of that stuff? Like, was it kind of hard to experience some of that stuff in the year or so after Mina was born?
So there were a lot of different factors with her. Um, somebody, some of her family got back involved with her after they had been estranged for years, hadn't talked to each other, seen each other in years, and really kind of she went downhill mentally very quickly thereafter, and it just continued after we had Mina. So it's kind of, I think, kind of a different issue or different
Sure.
aspect to have to try to compare to these.
That's fair. Every situation is differently, and I feel like that's one of the things about like parenthood that like not being a parent, not wanting kids, like that's definitely one thing that like I've learned. And I love the scene in when Daniel is like actually like confiding and has that like big climax with Calvin in the end, and he talks about like this like relief when she lost the baby. It's one of those things that like not everyone wants to be a parent or is like cut out to be a parent because there's a lot of like fear and anxiety that come alongside of being a parent. um can you like did you like experience any of that stuff like mental like in your own mental health like being a parent for the first time?
My big issues came from the fact that there was everything was very one-sided, and there was a lot of mental abuse
Hmm.
towards me. So like she would go off for the day and didn't come back and put our kid to bed. I was never left alone with the kid, but with my daughter, things like that, and I was always told I was a threat to everybody. So it, yeah, it's kind of hard to try to compare that kind of thing where I wasn't allowed to be left alone with my kid, or else I was accused of God knows what. So I really didn't get to be a dad until I think Mina was like 3 or 4. Then I actually started to get to be a dad and take care of my kid and do stuff with my daughter and stuff.
Sucks. I'm sorry to hear that.
You didn't know it was that bad, did you?
I didn't. No, like I've known a little bit about like your history with your ex and kind of the toxicity that it implores there. And you know, I've had stories like you've told me stories over the last couple years about it. And yeah, I didn't. But I think it parent everyone has like those different stories when it comes to um parenting. And some situations are great where couples are healthy, and then some situations are like what you had.
Yeah, and I mean it's the way it's worked out. My daughter now, she's 18 and she calls me for everything. We text and talk on almost a daily basis, even though she's back in Virginia with her grandparents and I'm in Mississippi. We talk all the time. She knows if she needs help, she calls me and I let her know how to take care of it. If she needs to fix something on the car, it's dad, this isn't working. Okay, take it to the shop. Let me know if there's a bill. She needs to pay for school. I take care of paying for school. So she knows who she can count on now. She's heard from her mom, I think, once in the last like 2 years. So it ultimately it worked out. Not necessarily the best for Mina, but it worked out, I think, the best for the situation.
I think it goes back to the thing we keep talking about throughout the course of this episode is like, eventually things work out. Like it sucks for the like, the 3 or 4 years that, you had to kind of be in those like toxic situations as a parent, unable to, truly be a dad. And but now you've embraced it, and like I think you're a great father. Like, the stories that you've told me, and like the you know just kind of getting to see you interact with your daughter when before you moved to Mississippi. You guys have a really strong relationship, and I think it goes back to that the core uh, theme of this episode is embracing the pain, and not giving up, and holding on.
Yeah, a lot of it for me was learning to not dwell or kind of live in the past, be aware of what happened, but move forward. So one of those kind of things.
I love I I love The Office, and there's a quote that Dwight says that he talks about nostalgia is like everyone's downfall. And I feel like when we're like talking about like the modern day aspect of like most like high budget mainstream movies, it's like we thrive on nostalgia, and then we're like always disappointed. Go listen to our episodes on Halloween Ends from last year to get that. Or Mark and I's battle over on Patreon where we debated which Halloween was better, 1978 or 2007.
Halloween three.
Uh,
I stand by that.
uh, but it's
Which
like
one was that?
that's Season of the Witch, man.
Oh, three.
That's it's so good.
It's a solid movie. It's just everybody was expecting another Michael Myers movie, is what it
It
hurt it.
doesn't no, it's still a solid.
Still,
That's one of those things
I
that
didn't
like
say it wasn't.
if you know the history behind it and the context of the production and like what Carpenter wanted to do, it really enhances and makes you respect them.
But not everybody knows that,
That's true. This is facts.
which it
I like
wasn't
I
portrayed in the movie.
yeah,
So,
I always like lecturing people and like telling them the history of that movie. I'm like, why do you think Michael Myers died in Halloween 2? Blew up sky high.
what you were saying about Resolve though, I do really agree with. A few days ago, my coworker was giving me like he's been reading through my book, and he got to the first four chapters. So I walk in the room, and he's like, you know, you really beat up your characters right off the bat. I'm like, yeah, well, I needed to give them something to bounce back from. And he's like, yeah, but you really went for it with them. I was like, but it's really, I think, the it's never fun to see somebody in pain, but it's incredible to see somebody bounce back from it. Um, the harder you get hit, the the more incredible it is to see somebody overcome. Um, and it's just a fact of life. Anybody know that has this story of their own struggle, and to see them later on thriving, it's just like that's my favorite person in the world. You know,
Um,
Yeah.
it's
Go ahead, Mark.
it's not about as cheesy as it sounds. It's not as bad. It's not about how hard you get hit, but how you get back up.
yeah,
And those experiences are what make people who they are and cause them to act the way they act or react.
Yeah, like I Andrew and I were talking a little bit in during break because Mark had a delivery and yeah, just kind of confining and like telling a little bit of like how victims and villains got started and like man, I I almost committed suicide when I was a little bit younger and like really wanted to not be here anymore. And man, I that pain of just like wanting to just to let go and not be present anymore. And like I look at where I am now with like my wife and our organization and this podcast, and it's just like it's so rewarding to have these conversations and to meet creators like yourself, Andrew, and like Paul Mark, one of the best guys I know. Because apparently Mark doesn't allow friends in that often. So like the fact that like I co-host a podcast with him, I guess that means something. In Mark's twisted little mind. But I agree, man. Like the one of my best friend Jason, like was an alcoholic for the majority of his life, and you when you hear his story, like he's been clean for 7 or 8 years now, and like he's one of the most like gentle, humble guys that like I've ever met. And I absolutely love that guy. And just kind of knowing where he came from to where he currently is, it is one of the most beautiful redemption stories that I've ever been able to experience and see for myself. And so I love the fact that like there's always hope at the end of the day for whether you're watching characters in a movie or reading them in a book or experiencing in real life.
I from the time I started my TikTok, I didn't expect to go anywhere with TikTok. And I never expected to actually publish a book. But the one thing I always knew for myself is no matter whatever happens, I'm not going to get into pushing a message. I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not going to do any of the stuff. I just want to entertain. Um, and there's one exception to that I have. Two kind of because I have talked about like Christian films on my page and like recommendations, people that want to see more good Christian films. Um, but like the one thing that I really do share and will become more apparent in my writing is this idea of overcoming PTSD. Um, if people listening have read the book, they'll probably pick up the hints of what the main character Dex he experienced through his father, um, because it wasn't until 1980 that PTSD was like officially recognized, especially for military uh, veterans, um, and it's a core driving force for my main character, um, and I think it is this idea of wanting to believe there's something better out there for some people. Unfortunately, haven't won their battles, and that can beat down you, the friends and family of that person, and make you feel like it can ruin your world experiencing that. Um, and there is this need to believe there's something better out there, and I feel like that's incredibly important, and that kind of resolve is needed in the world, and that's the kind of message I would like to share, that there is something better, there is something worth fighting for, and there is hope for everybody.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that like when people like hear me talk about like religion, like I was talking about earlier, like it's always like a weird conversation because they go like, yeah, like I'm a Christian, like I'm a practicing devout Christian, and I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my hope that I put in Jesus. And I think that's like such a profound statement to make. Like it doesn't have to, I would love it to be Jesus, but it doesn't have to be. Like put your hope in something, because there's so much hope. There's so much hope left in the world that just kind of seems like it's like undiscovered. You know, there's always reason for to hold on till tomorrow.
Well, if you want to get into that, where's that stuff that you're finding hope in coming from?
Yeah.
I'm on board with you, Josh. Um, no, I do owe everything to my faith to God. Um, and
Wait, is this the first episode we've had that I'm the one outnumbered?
oh,
What's up? I mean, yeah, like Mark and I have like we've shared, I think we got into this like a big discussion about this on like the Wicker Man episode, the Day Watch episode. We really got like really deep into this stuff, but like I think Andrew poses like a good question, like a good challenge. Where is your hope? Because for alcoholics, it's alcohol. It's the choice of, for drug addicts, it's the drug of choice that you want to call. There's so many different things that you can put your hope into, but is it bringing you positive or negative effects to your mental health and your day to day?
I don't know where to go off of that.
All right, I got one thing I want to get at, and we can end on this. All right, so we're obviously for the cults, the white is supposed to signify purity, right? What does the triangle mean? Is that just supposed to be like,
The portal to the other realm.
well,
well,
I get that, but like, is that like the whole thing, or is there like something
so
more?
I guess it's the triangle god or this temple because they get to the other realm and there's the triangle. He's been having a vision of this pyramid he's been seeing, um, which I wouldn't look too deep into it. The pyramids have been used in so many different cultures as places of reverence, like in Egypt, the tombs of the pharaohs, in Aztec and Mayan, like Central American civilizations, pyramids. They had them, and that's where they would display sacrifices or hold their religious gatherings. And at the end of the day, it's just a simple shape to make. So, um, uh,
I was gonna ask Mark, since you're a little bit more acquainted with like Lovecraft stuff, how many of the elder gods are there?
Oh God. There are quite a few. I'm
All
not
right,
sure
well
of the
then
exact number, but I can look it up real quick.
because I was gonna say like maybe, I mean, it may represent like the like a trinity of like, the three, like, maybe like the way that like Christianity has like, the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, like it could definitely be something along those lines. But if there's a oh God kind of number, then probably not.
it could be like a temple in this world that they're trying to get to meet their god.
It could be. Mark, how many elder gods are there? You look.
So there's technically only one elder god. The other ones are the old ones.
That's what I was gonna say, because I was like, I remember in Dunwich they called it they called them the old ones.
Yeah, there's like 40 known outer gods. I mean, it's a real big thing when you get into it. There's so many different things or different beings. There's actually you could go on YouTube and find hour, 2 hour long videos that just explain the different essentially deities of the Lovecraft universe. It's just Cthulhu is
Jeez.
the one that everybody knows.
Thanks, South Park.
That makes sense though.
So
All right. Well, I think that's gonna do it for us on this episode of Abyss Gazing. Andrew, thank you so much. Where can people find you online and pick up the book?
So you can find me online, Instagram, TikTok mostly. I have a Twitter, never use it, and Threads as AV Collecting. My book is available on Amazon, or if you're a distributor, I am available on Ingram Spark. Um, yeah, Amazon. Empire of the Void by Andrew-Valenza. Leave a review if you're so kind. Yeah.
We will have a link in the show notes below. Mark, where can people find you online?
I'm on Instagram, and that's really about it.
Yeah. Drop the
I'm
handle, bro.
not a big fan of social media as a whole, just because I'm not, but I do this, which makes no sense, does
Yeah. I think you just like talking about horror with me, man.
it? So I've got my miniature painting and 3D printing stuff on titanium juggernaut painting on Instagram.
Well, you guys can follow me. I'm on Letterboxd at Captain Nostalgia. You guys can follow Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your podcast from. Just search Abyss Gazing. And then you guys can also find our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, YouTube, and wherever you guys get your podcasts from. Until next time, remember that the longer you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back.